Now, Indiana is in thin air. This is uncharted territory. They have officially left the orbit of average. They are in deep space where the stars look different. There's no radio contact with the team they used to be, right? This is a space, though, that has long been occupied by the Crimson Tide. Welcome in. It's always college football. I'm your host, Greg McElroy, and man, did the first round deliver the kind of drama we were promised? I think it did. I think it was terrific. We saw history made as Alabama became the first team in the 12-team era to win a playoff game on the road. They erased a 17-point deficit in the process. Then the next morning, it felt like the games were almost simultaneously back-to-back. Miami goes into arguably the most hostile environment in all of college football, grinds out a 10-3 defensive masterpiece, and Ole Miss and Oregon defend their home turf with very dominant performances and sent a clear message to the college football world that they are here and they are ready to make a run. But now you got the heavyweights coming off a bye, and today we will preview the quarterfinal slate. This is going to be just a 4-game slate in a 26-hour period that is going to be phenomenal. I hope you guys are as excited as we are. We kindly ask you, before we get into the games, to go ahead and subscribe to the podcast, wherever you get the podcast. Go and subscribe to the ESPN College Football YouTube page. There's a million things there for you. It doesn't really matter what you're looking for. They have something for kind of every audience on the ESPN College Football YouTube page. But I cannot encourage you enough. Go check out the podcast platform, whatever podcast platform you want. We are good to go. We will kick things off at the Cotton Bowl, Miami against Ohio State. Then we'll roll into the 3 New Year's Day matchups, starting with the Orange, going to the Rose, and then finishing up in a rematch there in the Sugar Bowl. So we're going to break down the matchups, the X factors, and we're going to have some fun along the way. Let's kick things off on a New Year's Eve edition of college football. All right, it is the Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic. So grab your coffee, maybe something a bit stronger. It is New Year's Eve. After all, AT&T Stadium, Arlington, Texas. The air conditioning will be crisp and the screen is larger than most zip codes. But we know what it's all about. It is the college football playoff. The second-seeded Ohio State Buckeyes taking on the 10th-seeded Miami Hurricanes. This is going to be a phenomenal game involving the defending national champion trying to prove that they haven't lost their mojo. And then you have a legendary program in South Florida that is trying to kind of change the narrative for the modern player. You and I, we grew up with Miami. We know what Miami's all about, but I'm 37 years old. And I think a lot of people that grew up watching Miami in the early 2000s thought they'd never lose. And who doesn't remember the matchup that these two teams had in the national championship 20 years ago? So let's set the stage. Ohio State, they entered into December looking like they were maybe better than last year. And then they meet Indiana in the Big Ten championship game. The Hoosiers knock off the Buckeyes in a game that felt like a defensive struggle from 100 years ago. Ryan Day and their offense getting criticized for ultra-conservative coaching, ultra-conservative play calling. There's offensive coordinator Brian Hartline's going to USF, and now it's going to be Ryan Day calling the plays. More on that here in just a little bit. And on the other side, you have Miami. So if you look at Ohio State, and while it didn't look great in their last matchup, it's been pretty good all year long. Well, Miami didn't look so great in the middle part of the season. And they are coming off a 10-3 win against A&M in the first round, but it was played in 30-mile-an-hour winds, and it made the passing game look like a game of 52-card pickup. So Miami has been hot. They are obviously battle-tested, but they remember 2003 when Ohio State derailed what was a dynasty at the time in double overtime thriller in the national championship. So I think Miami, those from the throwback era, they remember that 22-year-old receipt. So let's start with the quarterbacks, the guys under center. Over there in the scarlet corner, if you will, it's Julian Sain. Basically a football-throwing robot is, I think, the best way to describe him. If you haven't watched him this year, he's amazing, guys. He led the country with over 78% completion. To put that into perspective, it's 3 percentage points clear of the next best in college football. He's calm, he's collected, and I think the comparisons to Drew Brees make some sense. Compact throwing motion, gets the ball out quickly, and can really dissect the defense. He was a Heisman finalist for a reason. But, there's always a but, going into the Big Ten championship game, he hadn't really experienced a lot of pressure. He had only been sacked 6 times in the first 12 games. Hadn't really been punched just yet. And then Indiana gets home 5 times. He was pressured on 50% of his dropbacks, and it led to him holding the ball a little bit longer. His average time to throw in that game was 3.54 seconds. That was by far the longest time this season by over a quarter second. It was his worst performance of the year. It doesn't get much easier heading into this matchup because Miami's defensive line, they're probably licking their chops, I'd imagine. Over on the other side, in the orange corner, if you will, it's Carson Beck. This guy's played a ton of football. He has been around college football for a very long time. He's pro style, will live in the pocket, 165 passer rating, which is excellent. But there is a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde with Carson Beck from time to time. Well, when he's at his best, highly efficient. But there have been times, too, against Louisville, against pressure. He's thrown 10 interceptions this year. 6 of those 10 interceptions came in their 2 losses. And against Texas A&M, he threw for just over 100 yards. But that was also partly because the wind was the 12th defender on the field for the Aggies. When you look at the recipe for Carson Beck in Miami, he doesn't need to be the hero. He just needs to kind of manage the game. And if he starts forcing it against one of the best defenses in America and probably the number 1 pass defense in the country, then the game could get a little bit ugly and it could be dicey, if you will. Looking at the firepower, if you like star power, this game is your personal Disneyland because Ohio State has the best receiving duo in the country, period. I'm not sure anyone will push back on that. Granted, I do think A&M, Miami's opponent in the first round, pretty close, but they're not Jeremiah Smith, who is number 1 in college football, I think, from a receiver standpoint, from a weapon standpoint. 6'3", 220. He's Megatron out there on the field. He's amazing. Opposite him is Carnell Tate, who is going to go in the first round too. He is basically 1B to Smith's 1A. They combined for over 2,000 receiving yards and 20 touchdowns. Don't sleep on the tight end Max Clare too, who is excellent. The transfer from Purdue has been great on third down and has really emerged throughout the season as a very reliable weapon. On the ground, the load will fall on the shoulders of Bo Jackson, who, yes, that Bo Jackson, not the one from Auburn from a long time ago, but a guy that has gone for over 6 yards a carry. Pretty impressive for a freshman. Miami answers with their own outstanding freshman, and that's Malachi Toney. He's not the traditional wide receiver threat that Jeremiah Smith is. And I said this on the broadcast last week. I think pound for pound, granted, he's not 6'3", 225 like Jeremiah Smith, but he's 5'10", 188. I think pound for pound, he might be the best freshman, quote, football player I've seen. He's a Swiss Army knife. He returns punts. He caught 89 passes. He scored the game-winning touchdown on a jet sweep against A&M. He's got 20 carries. They use him as a wildcat quarterback. He's got 7 passing attempts. He also has nearly 270 return yards. So he's kind of the all-points bulletin number 1 for Miami as a threat offensively in a lot of different ways. The real heart and soul of Miami's team, though, especially based on last week's performance, is their running back, Mark Fletcher. He's 225 pounds, downhill, nasty runner. Really, really good, very powerful, and just put up 172 yards on the Aggies, including a 56-yard soul-crushing run there in the fourth quarter. So if Fletcher can get rolling a bit, Ohio State's defense will have to anchor down and probably adjust what they're doing from a structure standpoint. Let's talk about the defense there for Ohio State. They allow 8 points a game. That's not a typo. That's one of the lowest totals we've seen in 50 years. Matt Patricia, the defensive coordinator, using a very NFL-style 4-2-5 scheme that erases passing lanes, confuses quarterbacks. They have Caleb Downs at safety, who is arguably the best defensive player in the country. Up front, Caden Curry, incredible when it comes to pressuring the opposing quarterback, but it's all over the place. Sonny Styles, Arvell Reese, Caden McDonald's, Kenyatta Jackson. Trying to decide which player I like most is really difficult. It's like trying to pick your favorite child, except all your children are Olympic gold medalists, and one of them just discovered the cure for the common cold. They are technically perfect. But as we saw against Indiana, there was a moment which it felt like they kind of got out-gridded, which is very uncomfortable to say because it's Ohio State, for crying out loud. So if this game devolves into a bit of a street fight, that neutralized talent gap that exists against just about everybody, that can happen. So it is in their best interest to try to turn this into a bit of a track meet, I think. On the other side, Miami, under Corey Heatherman, they have implemented a bit of a havoc style. They don't want to stop you. They want to hurt you in the backfield. They want to penetrate. They want to get you off schedule. They have an incredible defensive end tandem. Starts with Ruben Bain, who's just a trench monster, fresh off a 3-sack performance and a blocked field goal against the Aggies, but not to be overshadowed is Akeem Mesidor. These two form an edge-rushing tandem that is NFL caliber, is the best defensive end tandem in the country. They also welcomed back Keontae Scott, who's their nickel, from injury, and his impact was felt immediately against Texas A&M. He had a forced fumble against A&M on a sack. He's got 11 TFLs, 5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and an interception. He's a wildfire on defense. So you might be able to contain him and slow him down for a second, but then he blitzes off the edge, sparks a fumble, and then the entire offensive plan is up in smoke. Now, Miami ranks 6th in scoring defense. They allow 13 points per game. They're ruthless. So if Julian Sayin wants to stay at that 78% completion, he's got to do it with Ruben Bain and company trying to introduce him to the AT&T Stadium turf. Now, there are a couple things here from an injury standpoint. The biggest concern right now for Miami is their linebacker, Mo Toure. He's the team's leading tackler. He's the heart of the defense, did suffer a very scary collision in the final moments of the game against Texas A&M. He's kind of motionless on the field, walked off with help. Right now, his status is unclear. But if he can't go, that's a pretty significant hole there in the middle of the Miami defense. And for Ohio State, the headline down the stretch was the health of Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate. Both, missed a little time with some lower body tightness. They played in the Big Ten title game. But when you watched them, it didn't look like they had that extra gear that you're so used to seeing with them. Now they got 3 weeks off. I think they'll be at 100%. Let's start with some of the strengths for Ohio State. Look, they have a significant perimeter advantage against anybody. That's number one. Smith and Tate against anyone is a mismatch. If Miami leaves their corners on an island, it's going to be a really long flight back to South Florida. The other thing about Ohio State is their defensive efficiency. They're number one in the pass defense, number one in the scoring defense. They force you to be perfect for 60 minutes. They also are very efficient offensively, in part due to Julian Sayin's accuracy. They keep the chains moving, and that 78% clip means that they don't face a lot of third and long situations. A couple of the question marks, and there are very few about Ohio State, is Ryan Day and their offense, last time out, implemented a very conservative offensive scheme. Now, Ryan Day has decided to reclaim play calling duties for the Cotton Bowl, and that's a bit of a tactical shift intended to kind of stabilize an offense that stalled the last time out. And it was just a couple days ago, Day announced he'd take over the headset for Brian Hartline for the duration of the college football playoff. 10-point performance is why. Hartline was criticized heavily with the red zone play calling, their personnel usage, not involving Jeremiah Smith, not involving Carnell Tate enough. So I think the move is kind of unique. But I think it's probably necessary, frankly. You heard some buzz, heard some rumblings about, maybe some frustration from Ryan Day's vantage point. Well, what does he do best? He calls plays. That's why he's the head coach at Ohio State. So him taking over, I think, is a benefit. I think you'll see a more aggressive team as a result. Number two, the offensive line. Maybe a bit of a question mark here, but it's partly because of who they're playing against. I think Miami's that good on the defensive line. I thought the offensive line this year for Ohio State had really taken a huge step. But for whatever reason, I feel like the O-line has regressed just ever so slightly as the season's gone along. Still a ridiculously talented group. And I kind of believe that the Indiana game was a bit of a one-off. So I expect that group to play better in a matchup like this. We'll now move to Miami's strengths. Number one, trench dominance. Their offensive line is elite. They don't allow a lot of sacks, led by Francis Mauigoa, the right tackle. Their defensive line generates relentless pressure. They are ruthless, violent, and very fun to watch. This is a team that's really built from the inside out, and their personnel along both lines of scrimmage make it a really tough matchup for every single team they play. They also have some momentum on their side. They just want a really gritty road playoff game, and I don't think they're scared of the bright lights. They're going to throw a punch, and they also have an outstanding running back in Mark Fletcher, who's coming off his career best performance. And if he's getting 6 yards a carry and the Ohio State defense gets a little worn down, then the Buckeyes' explosive offense will stay on the sideline. The question marks for Miami, Carson Beck. When he's been great, and he's been great in the final month, that's huge. But he wasn't great against Texas A&M. And you cannot give Ohio State extra possessions and expect them to survive. He's got to be smart with the football. Those 10 interceptions cannot come to the forefront in a game like this. They also have some kicking woes. If we're using recency bias, Carter Davis missed 3 field goals against Texas A&M. So in a game in which the spread is wide and the margins are thin, they have to be able to knock down those threes when they are in field goal position. The biggest statistical mismatch right now is probably third down. You look at Ohio State, they are number 2 when it comes to third down offense. They convert 55% of the time. Miami's defense is 13th. They get off the field on 59% of the time, or excuse me, 69% of the time. So a pretty good matchup of good versus good. The other side, though, is where things get a little bit more interesting. Ohio State is 6th defensively getting off the field. Miami is 31st staying on the field. And in their most recent outing, they converted just 3 of 12 of their third downs against Texas A&M. So they must be better on third down against Ohio State. But a lot of that starts on first and second down and getting it into third and manageable. If Miami can't stay on schedule, then Carson Beck will be forced to throw into the teeth of that Matt Patricia-led secondary. And that's where dreams go to die. Like we always do in our matchups like this, there are 6 questions that I think will determine the outcome of the game. Question 1, will Ohio State step on the accelerator like they did in the postseason last year? Abandon the conservative game plan that failed against Indiana, use your Heisman finalist quarterback, use your All-American wide receivers, stretch the field, move Jeremiah Smith around like they did last year. And Ryan Day, I think, calling offensive plays, they're going to be able to do that. They're going to take back control. They're going to get aggressive. And they know that in a game like this, their defense should be able to contain Miami. So their offense is going to force the issue, I would imagine, in the matchup early in the game. Number 2, can Miami play bully ball? Look, Miami is about as physical team as I've seen this year. They want this game to devolve into a WWE steel cage match. Like, they don't care about the score in the first quarter. They just want to put you into the meat grinder. By the fourth quarter, they aren't playing a football team. They're playing against a collection of sore ribs and regrets. So use the elite offensive line to pave way for Mark Fletcher, control the clock, shorten the game, and keep Ohio State's offense on the sideline. Question 3, can Ohio State neutralize the Miami edges by using quick passes and tempo, prevent Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor from getting into a rhythm with their pass rush? If they can keep Julian Sayin upright, Miami probably doesn't have the secondary depth to cover all the weapons that the Buckeyes have on their offensive side. Question 4, will Miami be able to generate havoc up front? Look, Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor, they need to live in the Ohio State backfield. They can get 4+ sacks, flush Julian Sayin out of his comfort zone. The precision for the Buckeye quarterback could deteriorate just a little bit. Question 5, can Ohio State stop the run? They've been able to do so all year. They give up under 2.9 yards per carry. They give up 85 yards a game on the ground. Those rank 6th and 5th, respectively. They need to force Carson Beck to beat him. If Mark Fletcher's held under 100 yards and Miami's offense becomes a bit one-dimensional, then Caleb Downs and co. will start collecting interceptions and get hands on the football. And then finally, question 6. Can Miami find success by utilizing a high percentage, low-risk passing attack? Now, Shannon Dawson, the offensive coordinator, they need to give Carson Beck high percentage throws. Screens, slants, jet sweeps. Beck is 117th in the FBS in air yards per target. The balls that he throws on average travel just 6.9 yards downfield. Nearly 60% of his attempts come within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage, which means the wide receivers better be able to create some yards after catch, and they don't want to test the middle of the field where the All-Americans for the Buckeyes live. So, who wins? Miami is a very tough, physical football team that represents everything that Mario Cristobal wants his team to be. They play the game with their hair on fire, and I expect them to keep it close. I genuinely believe that because I think their defense is just that good. I think Reuben Bain will get home a time or two. I think March Fletcher will pound away and kind of chip away at this Ohio State defense. But Ohio State is a complete team with an advantage on the outside. And the Buckeyes defense, they're historically elite. I don't know if Carson Beck can put up enough points to overcome the sheer volume of talent that Ohio State has on the perimeter and at some spots on their defensive side. I think Ohio State wins, but Miami covers. The final score, the Buckeyes 24, Miami 17, and the Buckeyes are back in the semifinal. Now we'll travel to South Beach, where the air is thick with humidity. You got some high-octane anxiety of two fan bases about to witness a historic collision. It's the Capital One Orange Bowl quarterfinal that feels less like a traditional bowl game and more like a tactical chess match that's going to be played at 100 miles an hour. On one side, you have the Oregon Ducks. They are the 5 seed. They're the established power from the Pacific Northwest, looking to return to former glory and kind of avenge the disappointment of a year ago. On the other side, it's the 4 seed Texas Tech Red Raiders, probably the fastest riser of the NIL era, making their first ever college football playoff appearance. I saw this coin the other day. I liked it. I'm going to use it. It's Nike money versus new money. And by the time we leave Hard Rock Stadium on New Year's Day, one of these teams is going to be very, very excited heading to the semifinal. Let's talk about the vibes first, if you will. Let's start with Texas Tech. They're not just happy to be here. They're here to prove that they belong. And Joey McGuire has turned this football team into a factory of dominance. Now, get this. The Red Raiders finished 12-1. They won their first outright conference title in 70 years. Here's the kicker. All 12 of their wins came by 20 points or more. So this isn't just winning. This is a season-long campaign of dominance. They earned a first-round bye. They've been sitting there in Lubbock like a coiled spring just waiting for this opportunity. Oregon, meanwhile, they're a battle-tested gladiator. They've been in this spot before. They navigated the meat grinder of the Big Ten. They finished 12-1. Their only blemish being that midseason loss to Indiana. They didn't get the bye, but they did get a rock-solid tune-up. They dismantled James Madison 51-34 in the first round in a game that maybe looked a little closer on the final scoreboard than it felt when you watched them. Now, while Texas Tech has been resting, Oregon's been getting into a rhythm. So does rest make you fresh or does it make you rusty? Now, historically, these teams are known for track meets, scoring 50 points, hoping the other guy scored 49. But this year, they've traded in their track shoes for combat boots. Both are in the top 9 in scoring offense, but it's really their defenses that have carried them here to Miami. We will start with the quarterback, and you cannot talk about this game without highlighting that position because it might be the most important position in this matchup specifically. For Oregon, it's Dante Moore. The guy's going to be a great pro. He's got an NFL-ready arm. He's got a ton of confidence. He's never seen a window he doesn't believe he can throw it into. He leads the nation in big-time throws. If there's a deep ball open, he's going to find it. There is a but. He will roll the dice from time to time. He's got 28 touchdowns. There are 8 interceptions on there as well, including 2 last week against James Madison. I went back and I watched every single one of those interceptions from this season. There are times when he can get a little fooled. Remember, he's a young player. All right, he's a young player. He has not played a ridiculous amount of football, so he can throw it into traffic, and pressure does make him a little more human. So he is a bit of a high-stakes poker player, but man, he will throw it into tight windows. So your coverage better be super sound on the outside, because if it's not, he will find a way to fit the ball into very tight holes. Then you have Texas Tech's Behren Morton on the other side. And Behren Morton is really steady, unflinching, very careful with the football, just 4 interceptions this year. He led the Big 12 in completion percentage at 67%. He doesn't need to be the hero because his defense has been great. He just needs to kind of keep the train on the track, but he needs to be aggressive in a game like this because this might be a high-scoring affair depending on how things go. Who are these quarterbacks going to be getting the ball to? Well, for Oregon, they're finally getting healthy at wide receiver. I mean, it's been tough. It's been amazing that they've been as efficient as they are, knowing some of the injuries that they've had to their perimeter skill. Kenyon Sadiq has been incredible. He's their tight end. He's got 8 touchdowns. Malik Benson has really stepped up down the stretch. He's the primary guy here in the absence of DeCorian Moore and others. He's got 645 yards. DeCorian Moore is the guy that can break it open. He's had a leg injury. If you leave these guys one-on-one, he'll turn your cornerback into a meme by the third quarter. Jeremiah McClellan, probably one of the most underrated wide receivers in the college football playoff field. And there is a little bit of buzz that Evan Stewart could be back for this one. Quote, there is increasing optimism that he will be able to play at some point this postseason, end quote. So he was expected to be the team's number one receiver this season. He got hurt in the spring. So if he's back, it's just more opportunities, more weapons, more targets, more explosiveness for this Oregon offense. Really, though, it starts by running the football with this group. For as good as their quarterback and wide receivers are, it starts by their offensive line and their running back room. Noah Whittington is a workhorse. He's amazing. Jordan Davison has a team-leading 13 touchdowns this year. And Dyer Hill, he is outrageous with the speed, averages over 8.5 yards per carry. Now, Texas Tech, they counter with their own two-headed monster at running back. I think their running back room is outrageously underrated because so much made about Bear Morton and the defensive line. Their running backs are a big reason why they're here. Now, Cameron Dickey has already crossed the 1,000-yard mark. He's got 14 touchdowns on his own. There's an X factor, though, in Jacoby Williams. The kid is electric. He's second in the Big 12 when it comes to manufacturing big plays. He's got 16 plays that have gone for 20-plus yards by himself. He can run it. He can catch it. He can probably throw it if they asked him to. And his impact on the passing game is immense. He can be a real weapon out of the backfield catching passes. And Oregon's linebackers, they better have their track shoes on when he's in the game because he will put them in conflict from time to time. And at wide receiver, they're really deep. Now, Caleb Douglas is their number one, but the gap between him and some of the others isn't as significant as you'll see at some other places. Reggie Virgil on the other side is outstanding. Coy Aiken, they're in the slot. He does a great job. And then Terrence Carter at tight end, he can cause some problems as well. The defenses are where things get a little bit scarier. Now, Texas Tech's defense is led by two men that can absolutely take over the game. One in Jacob Rodriguez, the other in David Bailey. Now, Rodriguez is a statistical anomaly. Yes, these are correct. I double-checked them 4 times. 117 tackles, 4 interceptions, and 7 forced fumbles. 7. Now, this isn't a linebacker. This is a pickpocket in a helmet. And if the offense is playing against a haunted mirror, every move the running back makes or the quarterback makes, this is the guy that's already reflecting it. Like he's following the ball. He's shadowing the ball. He knows exactly where it's going to be. And David Bailey, he makes life miserable for the opposing quarterback. He leads the team with 13 and a half sacks. And he's complemented by Romello Height on the other side. On the interior, Lee Hunter and A.J. Holmes. Those guys do a really good job. And their secondary is statistically strong, but they've benefited from a ridiculous pass rush. So it's a little difficult to know exactly how good they are because no one's been able to block them. No one's been able to hold up long enough to test that secondary. On the Oregon side, the defense is a real collective unit. Now, Bryce Betcher, he's kind of the heartbeat. He's got 113 tackles, does a lot of the dirty work there in the middle. And their pass rush is led by Titum Tuioti, who has 7.5 sacks. Now, the rest of their defensive line is beastly too, with Mateo Uiagalelei, Amari Washington, Bear Alexander. And the Oregon secondary, they're actually ranked slightly better than Texas Tech. They're third nationally in passing yards allowed. They have shown a couple cracks lately, gave up over 300 in a few of the games down the stretch. Injuries are a great equalizer, but getting Gary Bryant back, getting DeCorian Moore back, that's massive for Will Stein, the offensive coordinator, and their playbook. We've already hit on the possible return of Evan Stewart. Texas Tech does have a slightly bigger hole to fill. Their star defensive tackle, Skylar Gill-Howard, he's been out for a little bit. He's the anchor of the interior of that defensive line. Now, there's optimism that he could return at some point in the future. But as far as the game in Miami is concerned, Tech is going to have to rely on some of their depth because he will likely not be available. Let's get nerdy for a second and talk about some strengths. Now, Texas Tech's biggest strength is their rushing defense. They are number one in college football. They allow under 69 yards per game. Now, their weakness, well, historically, It was their pass defense, but they've improved into the top 24 this year. Oregon's strength is balance. They can beat you with Whittington on the ground or one of the other running backs. They can hit you off play action with Dante Moore through the air. Their weakness is havoc. They only have 70 tackles for loss. That's tied for 69th in the FBS, and that is the second fewest among the 8 teams that are still alive in the college football playoff. The fewest is actually Georgia, as crazy as that might sound. They are steady, but they don't create those big momentum-shifting negative plays that you'd love to have in a game of this significance. Now, over the last 2 seasons, this is the number one indicator here. Oregon is 25-0 when they rush for 100 yards or more. They are 0-2 when they don't. Now remember, Texas Tech allows just 69 rushing yards per game. So this might be the game. If Tech holds Oregon to 99 yards, based on historical precedent, the Ducks have a 100% loss rate, okay? At least in the last 2 years. If Oregon hits 100 or 101, they're undefeated. It's that simple. That might be just a 2-yard difference. Well, based on how things have gone for this team the last couple of years, that might be the biggest indicator. There are 5 questions in this game. Number 1, can Oregon establish the run? Matchup of elite versus elite. Oregon is second in yards per carry, just under 6 yards per carry. That's behind only Utah. Texas Tech is first in yards per carry allowed. They allow just 2.3 yards per carry. This will be where the game is won and lost, in my opinion. We've talked about the 100-yard threshold. Can the offensive line for Oregon move that number 1 ranked run defense? And for Tech, can they stop the run? Can they make Dante Moore throw it 45 times and wait for a possible mistake at some point? That's maybe the biggest question in all these quarterfinal matchups. Question 2, can Texas Tech keep the pocket clean for Baron Morton? Now, backfield pressure. Now, Texas Tech offense, they only kind of stutter when Baron Morton gets hit. And Oregon is not a group that usually lives in the opponent's backfield. But if Oregon can find a way to manufacture a consistent rush, Morton could feel the heat. If they can't, then he could pick them apart. Question 3, can Oregon's secondary limit the explosive plays? Now, Oregon's got a very highly ranked pass defense. They're 5th in yards per game through the air. I mean, they are outstanding. They have shown a little bit of vulnerability against USC and against James Madison, but it's hard for me to put a lot of stock in the second half of the James Madison game. It just is. I know it's what have you done for me lately, but to me, that feels like an outlier. I think they're really good in the back end. And I think their numbers, though, they might be slightly inflated. They played a couple teams that flat out can't throw it, whether it's Iowa or Oklahoma State or Wisconsin. So maybe their numbers are a bit skewed, but I still think it's a really good group on the back end. Meanwhile, Texas Tech's offense, they rank 11th in passing. So they can capitalize on some lapses if Oregon is at all vulnerable in a game like this, but they're especially good when it comes to creating explosive plays. Texas Tech has 90 plays that went for 20-plus yards this year. That is second in the FBS. So Oregon needs to keep the ball in front of them in this matchup. Question 4, which team will finish better in the red zone? Now, there have been moments this year where Texas Tech was not very efficient in the red zone when it comes to scoring touchdowns. The first game against BYU comes to mind. They scored just 2 touchdowns on 7 red zone penetrations. Oregon is 32nd in red zone touchdown percentage. They score touchdowns on 68% of their red zone drives. So pretty good. Meanwhile, Texas Tech is remarkably average. They score just 56% of the time touchdowns rate. That is 98th in college football. That is a huge problem. A huge problem. However, they're going against Oregon's defense, which is 117th when it comes to allowing touchdowns on red zone drives. So it's poor against poor. How does Texas Tech fare when it comes to defensive touchdown rate? Well, they're 64th. So Oregon's 32nd on offense, Texas Tech's 64th on defense. So advantage Oregon. Texas Tech is 98th on offense. Oregon's defense is 117th. So I think all in all, maybe kind of a toss-up. So I think that could be a real indicator on who wins the game. And then question 5, can Texas Tech force some mistakes? They are number one in college football with a plus 17 turnover margin. They're tied for first with Indiana. They've scored 94 points off turnovers this year. That is first. Dante Moore has had a few mistakes this year, but Texas Tech's defense, they are specifically coached to take shots at the ball, take the ball off the opponent. That's led by linebacker Jacob Rodriguez, and his 7 forced fumbles tell the story there. So to win, I think the Red Raiders must bait Dante Moore into making those risky big-time throws. And if Moore, for whatever reason, is seeing some ghosts and the pass rush is affecting him, maybe Texas Tech can get the hands on the football. All right, enough talk. Let's make the call. I think this might be the toughest game to call in the entire bracket as far as against the spread. Now, Oregon, they have the higher ceiling. Texas Tech might have the higher floor, especially with what they do in the front defensively. I do think Oregon in the second half against James Madison looked a bit complacent. You can't be complacent against Texas Tech. They've spent a month trying to prepare for this game, and they've been beating teams by 20-plus points almost every single week. Now, they're rested. They're motivated. They're the best defensive player in the country. But I think it's going to be very interesting in this game because I think this could turn into a bit of a track meet. I think Oregon, they're going to maybe struggle to run the ball a little bit early. I think Dante Moore will make some spectacular plays. However, I do think Dante Moore might make one mistake that could determine the outcome. I'm taking the Texas Tech Red Raiders to win this game 31 to Oregon 27. High scoring game, should be a very fun game. I think Lubbock could burn to the ground if this final result comes to fruition. The Rose Bowl, the granddaddy of them all. Welcome to Pasadena, hallowed turf at Rose Bowl Stadium, a national historic landmark that has seen everything from the Four Horsemen to Vince Young's scramble to the corner touchdown. Keith Jackson, so good. But let's be honest, if you had told me 3 years ago we'd be sitting here on January 1st, 2026, watching the number 1 seeded Indiana Hoosiers, yes, Indiana, face the 9th seeded Alabama Crimson Tide, I would have asked you to step away from the eggnog. Because this does feel a little bit like a glitch in the matrix a little bit. On one side, you have the Alabama Crimson Tide, a program that has spent the last 2 decades treating national championships as participation trophies. On the other side, you have Indiana, a program that until very recently was struggle bus. Winning the toss was successful in some of the games against matchups like this. And it's going to be settled here, 4 o'clock Eastern time on New Year's Day. Exactly 100 years since Alabama's first Rose Bowl appearance in 1926. That was a win over Washington that essentially told the rest of the country, quote, hey, we play football in the South here too. So now a century later, they return to Pasadena, not as the invincible juggernaut we've seen in the last 20 years, but as a touchdown underdog to the team from Bloomington, Indiana. So history has kind of a weird sense of humor, doesn't it? But the narrative here is amazing. Let's talk about these 2 locker rooms because the psychological contrast is fascinating. Indiana is currently riding the wave of the Curt Cignetti effect. And we all know that when he took the job, he famously told recruits that he wins. Google me, all this other stuff. People laughed at the time. They're not laughing now. The Hoosiers are 13-0. They are Big Ten champs. And they have a business trip mentality that loves physical, violent contact defensively and high-flying offense that is very difficult to stop. They're one of the most complete teams I've seen in college football in some times. Their last time out, they beat Ohio State 13-10 in a defensive fist fight. This narrative is very simple. They're not here for the roses or the parade. They're here to kick your teeth in and be home by dinner. That's Indiana's whole approach. And for Alabama, the season has been the ultimate bounce back, if you will. Now, Kalen DeBoer, of course, inheriting the throne from Nick Saban. It's tough to follow Nick Saban. And there have been some moments along the way in which they've struggled, but they've also looked very dominant at times as well. The cracks in the foundation, it's a weekly talking point. And I think they're a little short-sighted, if you want me to be honest, because I think this is a team that just went to Norman, Oklahoma, fell behind 17-0, and then proceeded to play like the best versions of Alabama during the Saban run in the final 40 minutes to win that game 34-24. They are a very dangerous football team. They're like a boss in a video game that you think's almost dead, and then his health bar turns purple and he starts flying around, right? I mean, that's what he is. So I'll say this is a calloused and resilient football team that becomes more dangerous the more you doubt them. Let's start with the quarterbacks. This game could very well come down to quarterback play, and there are some varying degrees of similarity here. We'll start with the Heisman Trophy winner, Fernando Mendoza. He transferred from Cal, plays the game with a surgical precision. He completes over 71% of his passes, 33 touchdowns against just 6 picks. He's not just a pocket passer. I think he's excellent off schedule. He's an improvisational artist, and if a play breaks down, he doesn't panic. There's very few that play the game as calmly as he plays it. He's never looked phased. He's always in a good spot, and he always seemingly gives his receivers a chance. Now, if he starts dancing around and all of a sudden you think you win, well, boom, hey, there's a tight end for a 15-yard gain that completely breaks the spirit of the opponent. He does it time and time again. On the other side is Ty Simpson, and he is what I like to call a, quote, clean pocket specialist. When he isn't pressured, he's elite. 70+% completion rate, a ridiculous 21-2 touchdown to interception ratio. Now, here's the catch. If you can get some pressure on him, if you breathe on him, if you can make him a little uncomfortable, that completion percentage drops off pretty significantly. He completes in the mid 47% range. So he's been battle tested this year, and he's had moments where he looks like a Heisman Trophy contender. He really has. And there's been a lot of moments like that, frankly, especially when you take into account some of the challenges that Alabama has had offensively in taking some of the pressure off of him. But the composure that he showed in the Oklahoma comeback shows that he's got the it factor, right? I mean, when the chips are down and he's just throwing caution to the wind, he's lethal. And he's really a lot of fun to watch. When he is in attack mode, he's an excellent, excellent football player. Let's start with Indiana's offense. Their offense is like a switch watch. It's all about timing and efficiency. They run what some have described as a triple option RPO. It's a complete nightmare for defensive coordinators. They have incredible 1-2 punch at wide receiver with Elijah Surratt, who will go up and win these contested catches. He's got 12 touchdowns. They got Omar Cooper, who's incredible after the catch, has tremendous speed that can get behind the defense. And Cooper did suffer a lower body injury in the Big Ten championship game against Ohio State, but all signs point to him being at or close to 100% for the Rose Bowl. Those two have combined for 23 touchdowns receiving this year. Don't forget, though, about Charlie Becker, who seemingly steps up every single time his number is called. And man, in a contested catch situation, he's got just 26 receptions this year. 8 of those 26 receptions were contested catches. So he'll go up, he'll win those one-on-ones, and he'll make plays on the ball. They also have 2 outstanding running backs in Roman Hemby and Kalen Black. They combined for over 1,700 yards. And they're not necessarily trying to out-athlete you on every play. They force your defense into a kind of a pick your poison type of approach. They force defensive triangles, and it makes it very difficult to cover everything. They're going to make you wrong throughout the course of the game. For Alabama, they have NFL parts. It starts with Jeremy Bernard. He is their most consistent target. He leads the team with over 800 yards. The emergence of Lottie Brooks against Oklahoma was remarkable. He had a career-high 79 yards and 2 touchdowns in the first-round matchup. Isaiah Horton is the big-body X-receiver. He's got 8 touchdowns as well. And then Ryan Williams, who at one point was All-American, freshman sensation last year, he still remains a home run threat every single time he touches the ball, but he hasn't really been at his best the last few weeks. Really hasn't been at his best all season long. Has had some drops, has had some challenges, but he's still a very viable weapon. And if you catch him on the wrong day, he has, over the course of his career, shown the ability to take over the game. And last but certainly not least, Josh Cuevas, one of the more reliable tight ends in the entire country. He's now back after a foot injury that sidelined him the last few weeks of the regular season and the SEC championship game. The problem for Alabama is the run game. Let's just say it has not been helpful for the Tide. They gained -3 yards against Georgia in the SEC title. They had just 28 yards rushing against Oklahoma. That's not a typo. You would think that Alabama could gain 28 yards just by falling forward a couple times. However, when you watch the Oklahoma game, there were a couple moments where you felt like, all right, maybe some progress is being made with how they run the football. Will be interesting because I think you have to be a little bit willing to run the football, even though Indiana's defense is outstanding. Let's talk about that defense. Their defensive motto is, let the dogs eat now. This is a group that is second in the nation in scoring defense. They allow just over 10 points a game. When you watch the defense as a former quarterback, you usually watch and ask yourself, okay, where can you get them? That's the question. If I'm studying a team, an opponent, I always ask the question, like, where can I attack? Like, where are they vulnerable? Well, with Indiana, I genuinely don't think they have a weak link. They have 11 excellent football players that start for them. Now, they don't rotate as much as some other teams, and they've been insanely healthy. More on that here in just a minute. But everyone that has played in critical moments for them has been terrific this year. Their linebacker, Aiden Fisher, he's the heart and soul of the unit. He's fast. He's mean. He can backdoor blocks. He knows the offensive play better than the offensive players at times. He's outstanding. And he's a guy that can absolutely make his presence felt on every single snap in this football game. But Kyle Kamara is one of the best in the Big Ten when it comes to creating pressure. But I really think the superstars on this defense are the interior of the defensive line. I think it's the most disruptive interior D-line in the FBS. I think they're two safeties, one of the better tandems in the sport. D'Angelo Pons is the ultimate competitor. He's a playmaker there at corner. They don't react to you. They're going to line up, they're going to play man, and they're going to attack you with their defensive line and their movement and their athleticism. Now, Alabama, they counter with a secondary that is legitimately elite. They are 10th in the country against the pass. Xavier Brown is a shutdown corner that has a real knack for pick sixes. He's stepped up in big moments multiple times this year against Oklahoma, against Tennessee, and gotten hands on the football and taken it to the crib. Keon Sabb, very physically impressive there at safety. Bray Hubbard always has a nose for the football, so if you try to go deep on Alabama, you're playing a bit of a dangerous game. They are really good in the back end defensively. Deontay Lawson is the signal caller there at linebacker. He's a tackling machine. He is critical in this game to diagnose and react as quickly as humanly possible. Finally, I think the pass rush for Alabama is coming off their best 30 minutes of football. They recorded 5 sacks against Oklahoma. Their presence is not a luxury in this matchup. It is a necessity to try to feel and to collapse that pocket, to sniff out run or to sniff out pass, to convert run to pass with their pass rush. They're going to have to play at their very best in a game like this. Now, the injuries. We have to address maybe the freakiest injury of the season. Indiana will be without their star defensive end, Stephen Daly. How did he get hurt? You're probably asking. Well, did he fall on? Was it a blindside block? Was it a lineman that rolled him up? No, he hurt his leg high-fiving fans in the Big Ten title celebration, which is so unfortunate. I just absolutely hate that. So his absence means that their pass rush will be just the tiniest bit thinned out, something worth watching early in this matchup. Alabama, on the other side, LT Overton, who is one of their best defensive line, he's been dealing with a medical issue, kept him out of the Oklahoma game, kept him out of the Georgia game. And while people around the program feel optimistic that maybe he could return at some point, as of this moment, it's still very much in the air. And Overton's big because he can play a bunch of different positions along the defensive line. The biggest gap in this game is the rushing yardage. Indiana is 10th in the country when it comes to running the football. Alabama is 120th. Let that sink in now. This is Alabama. This is a group that has long prided themselves on being able to run the ball, and they had running backs that looked like they were carved out of granite. Now they've struggled to gain positive yardage against quality Power 4 competition. And then you look at the third down conversion rate. Indiana is number 1 in the country. They convert nearly 56% of the time. Alabama is 44th. In a playoff game, third down might be the biggest determining factor. And if Indiana's ability to sustain drives creates a massive advantage, then it will be very challenging for both Alabama offensively and defensively to find a way and a path to victory. And you look at the kicking game. You look at Indiana's kicking game. They've missed 2 field goals this year. Their starting kickers missed just 1. That could be big when both defenses are pretty good and points might come at a premium from time to time. An effective kicking game could be huge. And Alabama's Connor Talty, he's missed 7 kicks. So in a game in which the margins might be thin, the kicker could very well find himself as the MVP. 8 questions in this game. Number 1, can Alabama protect Ty Simpson? Now, Indiana's pressure, if it can get home and force Ty Simpson into that 47% completion territory, this could get very dicey. But if Alabama's offensive line holds, then Ty can find some holes in that Indiana secondary. And you got to think that Indiana will approach it with the mentality of don't let Ty Simpson breathe. They need to approach this game like a hydraulic press. Every second the quarterback holds the ball, the ceiling needs to get an inch lower. The walls need to get an inch tighter to the point in which there's no room for the quarterback to operate. They can use Aiden Fisher. They can use D'Angelo Pons to create pressure packages to force some mistakes. Question 2, can Indiana establish the run? Now, Indiana has the Heisman Trophy winner at quarterback, yet they run the ball on 55% of their offensive snaps. They're going to lean on Hemby. They're going to lean on Black. This is a group that averages over 220 yards a game, and they'll use the RPO effectively to sustain long, time-consuming drives that could potentially wear Alabama down. Question 3, can Alabama create a little balance? Look, Alabama doesn't need to run the ball 200 yards. That's probably not going to happen. Let's just be real. But they need just enough of a threat to stop Indiana from pinning their ears back with their pass rush. If they run for 28 yards again, it could be very difficult. Alabama does not necessarily need to dominate on the ground, but they must avoid catastrophic rushing failures that you've seen at times this year. And in their last 5 games against Power 4 defenses, Alabama's averaged under 64 yards rushing a game. Like I said, that includes a negative yardage performance against Georgia and a 28-yard performance against Oklahoma. If they can't get to 50, 80 yards, then Indiana will be able to play that vertical defensive shell that focuses entirely on disrupting Ty Simpson's passing rhythm. Question 4, will Indiana's weapons on the outside be able to consistently win against Alabama's secondary? Alabama plays a bunch of zone coverage, and I'm thinking you're going to see in this game, probably going to see a little more man. I don't think they have a choice. With all that Indiana tries to attack you with, they're probably going to have to lock guys up, meaning there's going to be some one-on-ones on the outside. And if Indiana can consistently win those, it could be tough sledding for the Tide. Question 5, can Alabama's use of the sugar huddle and late adjustments neutralize Indiana's defensive adjustments? Now, Alabama can kind of neutralize some of these changes from Bryant Haynes' defense by using some tempo, using some sugar huddles, moving some late snap audibles, and the strategy was pretty effective against Oklahoma. It's been pretty effective all year. They've utilized fake snaps to try to catch the defense off guard. It can at times maybe lead to a big play. And if Alabama can kind of disrupt the rhythm of this vertical attacking front from getting set or shifting late, they might be able to create a mismatch in the secondary for one of their explosive playmakers. Question 6, can Fernando Mendoza's mobility put stress on Alabama's pass rush? Now, Fernando Mendoza can use his legs to extend plays. He's great at that. And that could neutralize some of the speed that Alabama will try to attack him with. And Bama struggled at times this year with some mobile quarterbacks. And Mendoza is the master of the improvisational 3rd and 8, where he buys just a little time and finds a seam and an open player for a conversion to extend the drive. Question 7, which team will win the turnover battle? Indiana is best in the country when it comes to turnovers. They are plus 17 in the turnover margin. Now, Alabama's been pretty opportunistic all year. They're plus 8. They're going to need a couple short fields in this game to overcome some of their rushing struggles. And then question number 8, how much does psychology play a role in this game? Now, Indiana is in thin air. This is uncharted territory. They have officially left the orbit of average. They are in deep space where the stars look different. There's no radio contact with the team they used to be, right? This is a space, though, that has long been occupied by the Crimson Tide. This level of expectations and pressure, it's different, whether Indiana wants to acknowledge that or not. They've never been the team in the biggest games of the Curt Cignetti tenure. Whether it was Ohio State last year, Notre Dame last year, Oregon this year, Ohio State this year, they've been underdogs every single time. Now they're the favorites. And that's a completely different animal. And for Alabama, their goal is to be the rock in the shoe, the glitch in Indiana's system, the nightmare that Indiana can't wake up from. Alabama as the hunter is very dangerous, and Indiana as the hunted is very unfamiliar. So that could be a role in this game. Alabama's the brand. We know that. All right. The roses, the history, the NFL talent, the we've been here before type of swagger. Indiana's been a machine. They're better on third down. They're better in the red zone. They're better on special teams. They are the more complete football team. Now, the loss of Stephen Daly does hurt the pass rush a bit, but Curt Cignetti has been really good. And I think he's too good of a tactician to allow that to sink the ship. I think Indiana can control the clock. I think Mendoza can hit Elijah Surratt for a couple clutch scores. I think the Hoosiers defense could frustrate Ty Simpson just long enough to maybe force them to make a mistake. I think Alabama will keep it close because their resilience and their incredible coaching staff, but the RPO that Indiana will employ is going to be too much to handle for 60 minutes. I'm taking the Indiana Hoosiers to win the game 27-24 over the Crimson Tide. They take the Rose Bowl, and Curt Cignetti reminds everybody just how good this Indiana team has become. Now on to New Orleans. Grab a bowl of gumbo and a powdered beignet because we're about to break down a heavyweight rematch. It feels a little bit like a Shakespearean drama with all that's gone on. This is the All-State Sugar Bowl. On one side, you have the number 3 Georgia Bulldogs, a team that has that, quote, hard-to-kill complex. And on the other side, the 6th-seeded Ole Miss Rebels, who are currently navigating the life after Lane reality. And man, alive, did they look good. Their first time out. The stakes are enormous, a ticket to the college football playoff semifinals. But before we look at the game and the matchup, let's talk a little bit about kind of the narrative surrounding these two teams. Now, Georgia, they are the resilient machine. Kirby Smart has built a roster that treats the first 3 quarters of a football game as a light warm-up. I mean, they've trailed in 6 of their 7 regular season SEC wins. They were down 9 to Ole Miss in October and decided, not today. They went and outscored them 17-0 in the final frame to win that game 43-35. They just stomped Alabama 28-7 for another SEC championship. They are kind of the been there, done that program of this era. And then there's Ole Miss. Now, their season's been a bit of a whirlwind, a record-breaking success. And then there were levels of betrayal where Lane Kiffin, the man who built the Lane train, he now heads to LSU. The Rebels did not crumble, though. They gave defensive coordinator Pete Golding the battlefield promotion to head coach, and Golding immediately tossed out some things that he didn't align with. And now they respond by smashing Tulane 41-10 in the first round. They're playing with a swag. They're playing with a chip on their shoulder. That chip on the shoulder is probably the size of a Mississippi catfish, man. I mean, they are fired up, and they are excited about this opportunity. Let's talk about the quarterbacks, the guys that are center. 2 quarterbacks that both finished in the top 8 of the Heisman Trophy voting. Gunnar Stockton finished 7th. Trinidad Chambliss finished 8th. This is elite level signal calling. Okay, Gunnar Stockton has been the steady hand for Georgia all season long. He is the model of efficiency, completing over 70% of his passes, 23 touchdowns against just 5 picks. But it's really his toughness that is his secret sauce. And against Ole Miss in October, he was a perfect 12 for 12 in the second half of that football game. He also added a 22-yard rushing touchdown in that game that left some of the Rebel linebackers wondering if they hit a brick wall. He is a weapon in the run game. Over 440 rushing yards, 8 touchdowns. So he is outstanding and the leader of this Georgia football team. On the other side, it's Trinidad Chambliss, who is a D2 transfer sensation. He won a national title at Ferris State before he decided to hop in the portal and just find out, hey, is the SEC that tough? No, it can't be, right? I'll just hop right in and I'll be incredible. He wasn't even the starter until Austin Simmons got hurt in week 3. Now he's thrown for over 3,000 yards. He's electric. And against Georgia the first time, he moved the ball for 5 straight touchdowns to open the game. And then when Georgia's defense kind of found their magic there in the fourth quarter, Trinidad Chambliss really looked human. Started missing some throws. And if you look at where things are against pressure, He drops off a bit, still pretty good, completes nearly 50% of his passes against pressure, but he really needs to stay upright to win in this football game. He's got to be decisive, he's got to be timely, he's got to use his legs, he's got to play the best game of his career. They have great weapons, both these teams, but we will start with Georgia. If you like skill players, this game is your Christmas morning. Georgia's go-to guy is Zachariah Branch. He is a speedster, led the team with nearly 750 receiving yards, but he's at his best when he gets some space. He is lethal in that area. He's in the top 5 nationally in yards after catch. If you give him an inch, he takes the whole stadium. They have 5 others that all have 240 plus receiving yards, but there is an all points bulletin that will be on Zachariah Branch in this matchup for Ole Miss, because he's the guy that can really take it over if you give him some room. They're hopeful that Colby Young will be back, would be a huge coup, but if he's not, Zachariah Branch has already shown the ability, regardless of what's around him, to take over the game. Their running game is outstanding as well. They have Nate Frazier, a sophomore back who's sitting at 861 rushing yards. He's trying to become Georgia's first 1,000-yard rusher since 2019. That was DeAndre Swift. They also have some other capable pieces there at running back as well. They'll roll some guys, but it really starts with Nate Frazier. For Ole Miss, it starts with their workhorse, Kejuan Lacey, All-American, led the SEC with 21 rushing touchdowns. His 1,366 yards on the ground, 939 of those yards came after contact. He runs like he's trying to settle a personal grudge with the turf. He is excellent, and I think he is the biggest difference between last year's version of Ole Miss that was outrageously talented and this year's version that is far more capable of beating you in a bunch of different ways. In the passing game, they do a really good job of distributing the football. They force you to cover every weapon on the field. They have 5 receivers that have over 550 yards this year. And it starts with Harrison Wallace, who leads the team in receiving yards and receptions. DeJon Stribling is the primary target as they approach the red zone. He's got 6 touchdowns. You can't ignore the speedster Deuce Alexander, the slot magician in Caden Lee, and the matchup nightmare that is Daquan Wright. This is a really good group of wide receivers. And what makes them difficult is they've all taken their turn. So you want to take away Wallace? Fine. Here comes Caden Lee. You want to take away Caden Lee? Perfect. Here's Deuce Alexander. You want to take Deuce Alexander away? Fine. Here's Stribling. Cool. You want to play man? All right. Here's Daquan Wright. He can beat you as a tight end. They are really good across the board. Let's talk about the way that this Georgia defense has evolved this year, because they've changed drastically. Kirby Smart and Glenn Schumann, they took a really talented group, a raw unit, and they really trained them over the course of the season to turn into hunters. And you can see it in their stances. You can see it in how they've adjusted. They look ready to pounce. Look, their star is CJ Allen. He's at the second level. Their junior linebacker, leads the team in tackles. He's arguably the most capable run defender in the SEC. And Georgia has allowed only 34 second half points in regulation all season. So if you don't beat them by halftime, they're like the anaconda that just keeps squeezing as the game goes along. Now, they don't have the ridiculous depth that they once had, but they're extremely well coached, and they have shown tremendous improvement this year. If you look at Georgia's havoc rates, their defense this season against Power 4 competition, in their first 6 games, 32% pressure, 5 sacks, 5 takeaways. So not very impressive in their first 6 games against Power 4 teams. In their last 4, their pressure rate has increased by 10 percentage points, up to 42%. Their sacks have doubled, and they have 4 takeaways in 2 less games. So they have been much more disruptive here in the final 4 games of the season. So tremendous credit needs to go to that coaching staff and those players into evolving into a group that can really hurt you in a lot of different ways. For Ole Miss, Pete Golding's defensive brain has been great this year. Their strength starts up front. They have excellent defensive line play. With Will Eccles and Xavier Harris being the defensive tackles, they've been outstanding all year. Cam Franklin's become a real primary disruptor off the edge. He's got 3.5 sacks, but he does have a decent amount of quarterback pressures, so his impact in this game will be felt. And they also have Suntarian Perkins, who has outstanding speed. He had 2.5 tackles for loss against Tulane. The problem is they don't have a ridiculous amount of depth. When they played Georgia the first time, Eccles and Perkins played 74 snaps each. Franklin and Harris each played 63 snaps. Their defensive line play, it dips once you get past the 40 snap mark. So to defend 60 plus is a really tall order. That's why things dropped off for them so significantly in the first matchup. So the goal is simple: make Gunnar Stockton uncomfortable, force him to make some mistakes that he hasn't made all year, and find a way to get off the field ASAP. Because if they don't, that could be a huge problem. Look, there are a couple, distractions surrounding this matchup for Georgia. Their starting right guard, Dontrell Glover, and a backup running back got arrested on a misdemeanor. The list of items: air fresheners, Febreze, pizza rolls, Gatorade. Like, I looked at the list. I'm like, this to me felt like it was a mistake. It was not. I don't think there was anything. I don't know. I have no idea. But to me, I would expect him to go. Glover has started 11 straight games. But if for whatever reason he isn't available, that could be significant because Georgia could also be without Drew Bobo, who has been hurt. He's their starting center. So communication could be tested in the event in which Bobo is not back in this game. And then lastly, Gabe Harris, their defensive end, is also apparently dealing with turf toe that could be problematic as well. For Ole Miss, the biggest concern as far as health is Kewan Lacey. He got banged up a little bit against Tulane. He tried to fight through it, but their running back depth is a little bit thin. Now, Logan Diggs, he had just 29 carries in the regular season. So if Lacey can't be that 20 carry a game monster that he usually is, then the Rebels offense could be playing chess without a queen. Every move is suddenly 10 times harder because they lost the one piece that could cover the whole board and bail them out of a bad position. Let's look at some of the technical matchups in this game. Georgia's strength is the red zone, and that's a nightmare for Ole Miss because Georgia scores on over 90% of their red zone trips, but they score a touchdown on 79% of those red zone penetrations. That is the second best in the entire country. They are so good at finishing drives. Ole Miss's strength is just their total offense. They're second nationally in yards a game at just under 500 yards a game. They're 10th in scoring, so they'll play fast, they'll play angry, they'll utilize 8 different weapons in the passing game, but the mismatch is the rushing defense. Georgia is 4th in the FBS in rushing defense. They allow just 79 yards a game on the ground. Ole Miss normally runs for about $185, but in their last meeting, Georgia held Ole Miss to just 88 yards. So if Georgia makes Ole Miss one-dimensional, it could be challenging in the fourth quarter. Ole Miss's weakness is the turnover margin. They are -2 in the regular season. Now, in a playoff game against Kirby Smart, a -2 margin is a death sentence. So you cannot give extra possessions. They got to be smart with the football. They are back to even based on their performance against Tulane. But if you look at quality competition, being smart is the number one priority for Trinidad Chambliss and the Rebels offense. Let's go to the questions. I have 8 of them. Number 1, can Gunnar Stockton's efficiency picked up where it left off against the Rebels? In the last meeting, he was flawless in the second half, and Pete Golding has got to find a way to break that rhythm. So if Stockton can sit in the pocket and pick them apart, it'll be very tough sledding. Question 2, can Kewan Lacey continue to be the biggest difference maker? Is he healthy? That's the first question. If he's only at 70%, 80%, then Georgia's linebackers can focus entirely on the pass. Ole Miss needs Lacey to keep the dogs honest at the very least. Question 3, how much will Ole Miss have to sell out to stop the run? You can expect Georgia to commit to Nate Frazier and the ground game to wear down the Rebels' 66th ranked rushing defense. If they can effectively establish the run, then they can elevate the snap exposure to the Rebels' defensive line. They have great personnel, but they are human and they will tire. So if the run for Georgia gets established early, fatigue will eventually set in, and that's not a good recipe for the Ole Miss Rebels. Question 4, can Georgia limit the big plays defensively? We know that Georgia's pass rush is improved, significantly improved, but it hasn't necessarily shown up in sacks. They still have just 20. They're 102nd in college football. But will it be enough to stop the big plays downfield for Ole Miss? Because Ole Miss has 83 plays that went for 20-plus yards this year. That's top 3. Georgia must keep the ball in front of them in this matchup. Question 5, can Ole Miss contain Zachariah Branch? Branch has nearly 600 yards after the catch this year. Ole Miss cannot miss tackles in the open field. So if Branch turns a 5-yard slant into a 40-yard gain, the Superdome's going to get real quiet for the Rebel fans. So they got to tackle him because he's going to find room, he's going to find space, but you can't allow the long catch and runs. Question 6, can Georgia maintain its red zone dominance? We already hit it. Georgia is beastly in the red zone, number 2 in the FBS. They are a 100-car freight train that is on a downhill grade. It's not about finesse. It's not about strategy. It's about 50,000 tons of physics that has decided that the train tracks belong to them, and it feels like that. It's like they're going downhill when they get in the red zone. Can Ole Miss somehow force them to kick field goals and not allow them into the end zone? Because this might be a high-scoring affair. So if they can, that would be very, very valuable. Question 7, can Ole Miss win the middle 8? You're probably wondering what the middle 8 is. It's the last 4 minutes of the first half and the first 4 minutes of the second half. Georgia's been really good in those areas this year. They're plus 29 in the last 4 minutes of the second quarter. They're plus 14 in the first 4 minutes of the third quarter. So Ole Miss needs to win that to avoid the outstanding second half resilience that we've seen from Georgia this season. And then question 8, can Ole Miss start fast and hang on? Ole Miss needs to jump Georgia early. They are plus 71 in the first quarter this year. That is third best in college football. And Georgia's been pretty human in the first quarter. They're just plus 18. You're thinking, well, that's pretty good. That's 56th in college football. But after that, that's when they become ridiculous. They're plus 190 in quarters 2, 3, and 4. That's top 9. They're probably the best adjusters in the FBS, and they're plus 46 in the fourth quarter. And the last time Ole Miss and Georgia teed it up, that's where the game was won and lost. Georgia outscored Ole Miss 17-0 in the final frame. And ironically, the Rebels have been great in the fourth quarter this year. But this is a next level test. So who will start fast? Who will finish strong? That could very well determine the outcome. Look, this game is a battle of styles. Ole Miss is high flying. They have great weaponry. They have a nothing to lose energy of a team that has survived a coaching divorce. Trinidad Chambliss has enough to make this game a shootout. Georgia is absolutely a different animal, and Kirby Smart is 4-0 in rematches. There's a reason why this team is hard to kill. Their situational efficiency, especially in the red zone, in the fourth quarter, they are the gold standard when it comes to those things in college football. So Ole Miss needs to start fast, and it should be a highly entertaining football game. And I look forward to being on the call alongside Sean McDonough, Molly McGrath, and Laura Rutledge from New Orleans. That'll do it for us here at Always College Football. We hope you guys are as excited about these quarterfinals as I am. It's going to be an incredible slate of games, a lot of great matchups, a lot of intriguing styles. And hey, at this point of the season, it's styles of fighters. It really is. It's matchup dependent. All these teams are great. No doubt about it. It's the top 8 teams in college football. All these teams are great. So maybe someone doesn't match up as well here. They might be the better team, but it's a tough matchup for them. We've already seen that there in the first round of the playoffs with Alabama over Oklahoma and Miami over Texas A&M. Now, will we potentially see it here in the second round of the 12-team playoff? It should be awesome. We hope you guys are fired up. Kindly remind you to go ahead and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get the podcast. Check us out on the ESPN College Football YouTube page, and we look forward to being back with you very, very soon. We hope you have a wonderful holiday season. We hope you have a tremendous new year. Be safe, be smart, and enjoy all the great college football that we have to look forward to. So for all of us here at Always College Football, thanks for making 2025 such an incredible, incredible year. We're grateful to you. We love you. And we very much appreciate you. So for all of us here at ACF, from Mark, Jake, Jack, the Jack intern, Sam, I'm Greg. We hope you have an amazing day. And remember, it's always college football. Hey guys, it's Greg McElroy. Thanks for watching Always College Football. Make sure you like, rate, and subscribe to ESPN's YouTube channel and wherever you listen to your podcasts.